Welcome back, everybody. Uh, Thankfully, that last scene didn't have the mics for them on, so you didn't get to hear everything that was just said. But I am here, and you will notice that I have completely replaced Ply.
I told you I would usurp.
Yes,
I
he has
did.
been fully usurped, and we've kicked him out. No, actually, so for people wondering, Ply is on, well, not I guess vacation, for his family. His wonderful daughter is doing a dance competition, and he is being a good father, and he is supporting her at this dance competition, and he is taking his whole family. So this is like a vacation, and they're all having a good time. So anyway, he's being a good dad. That's why he's not here. So let's all applaud. Good fathers. Yay, fathers. Yes.
We here, single men, no kids, to
No
speak
children,
of.
no responsibilities.
So we're here with you.
But so yes, that he is not actually being replaced. He's just being a good dad. But with me, I do have, as everybody knows, Hunter Johnson, who is wrong hand over here, and then over here is Kevin, who I don't know his last name. What is your last name?
Yes, Pearce.
Pierce. I know your last name. I do know your last name. I think I even have to say. Yeah, I know. I knew his name because it's actually, I think, in his email. But also, so Placebo and Evil, because I don't know, it's the screen name that we've known forever as Evil Stork, and that's just who he is. So when I refer to them, I will most likely call him Placebo and him Evil, and that's just, you'll have to figure that out. I probably will not use their proper names because it's not in my brain. So anyway, the topic that we will start with, and we'll figure out where we go from there, is I'll probably recover this a little bit with Ply because I guarantee you he will have an opinion, a rather strong opinion about this. But the morality of the mentality of any press is good press, and how what I would call what are known in the industry as influencers. So basically, social media content people, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, all that. People who create content in those avenues, what moral responsibility do they possess for the society around them that they're creating the content in? One example I gave the guys before we went live was a lot of content creators have been going over to Japan and causing a really huge disruption. They've been they'll just mess with people, or they'll get on their subways, on their trains where you're supposed to be quiet, and they're just yelling at people, or they're dancing, or they're getting in the way, they're tearing stuff up. I remember, what is the guy that went to South Korea and he has actually got arrested and he is in jail because he was causing so much. He was tearing signs up and stuff, and it was a big deal. South Koreans got so upset that a military guy, a former military guy, chased him down and tried to beat him up. He was causing that much disruption to their society. But I know in Japan, some of the stores have been closing their doors to foreigners because of these people. Before, they would serve everybody, but influencers have been so disruptive that they have now caused establishments to not serve anybody who's not Japanese. Just because it's been so disruptive, and so it messes with everything so bad. And then I kind of think about that even in the societies that they're from. How often do you see people dancing in the middle of a street? Or they're mad that people are walking down a sidewalk because they're shooting their little TikTok dance video. And so they expect all of society to revolve around them and their drive to become famous and make money. And it's the burden is placed on society to favor them. And so I don't know. I'm just going to ask these guys a little bit to give their thoughts on the morality of that, and how much we need to, because this is a podcast, right? It's a YouTube podcast. So it does influence us, and it does affect us as we make decisions on how we create content. How much should we take into consideration the social impact of what we're creating?
Sure. So I guess my thoughts initially go to okay, so in these situations, we have people who are being selfish, right? Where they go places, they do things selfishly, they take from those around in an attempt to boost themselves up. Um, and I suppose the question to answer then is, what is wrong with that? What's wrong with them doing that? Um, do we owe anything to each other naturally? Do we owe anything to each other as a result of us being in a society with each other? Do we owe it? Um, if there's a few ethical systems you can go with. Um, my favorite one is always that really you should do what benefits yourself the most. And so in this situation, for me to say that what they're doing is wrong, I would have to find a reason that what they're doing doesn't benefit them the most of their various options. And that would be tough, right? And I think it would be almost impossible if these TikTokers um, did not care about sort of like their spiritual soul, right? Like, because in my mind, yes, they're getting rich. Yes, they're getting famous. Yes, they're getting everything that they want materially. There must be some sort of damage that is done within where they know they are not fulfilled or they are not whole in some way. But if these people are such that they truly do not care about that stuff and they're just like partying it up and having a great time, then I would have to say that what they're doing is fine, which sounds crazy, but that's the conclusion.
So are you saying that is a position that you firmly stand behind? That people should do what is best for them, regardless of the social impact? Or, well, here's my question: is it not in your best interest to create a strong society that you function in? Because eventually you will have to function within that society. So it's
Yeah.
like maybe temporarily you are getting, ahead of the game by taking advantage of others, but long term, are you destroying what's the point of being a billionaire if you are rich and famous if you're in a society that's crumbled and everybody's miserable and it's not, there's nothing to buy, like Venezuela.
Um, yes, yes. If the riches get you nothing, then
Mm-hmm.
that's not right. But I guess I'm assuming that society is not crumbling to that serious degree here, right? Like they take their money and their stuff and they go places and it works just fine. Um, and I can't help but wonder if in building this society, uh, there's no like blueprint to build it. There's no steps you can take to guarantee that society will be constructed in the way that you want, or even in the time frame that you want. You could die by the time that society is what you want it to be. Um, so yeah, I would stick to you do what benefits you the most in the long run.
It would be interesting to see what your cutoff is on that. Like when does it become too
I
morally
that's what I
reprehensible
mean.
to,
There can't be a cutoff. It's infinite.
as long as it's within the laws of wherever you are, then it's acceptable, or
Nope. If you
not
can break the
not even
law and
that?
get away with it, you should. If you can break the law and benefit
Oh,
yourself and get
sweet
away with it, you
Jesus.
should.
So
Okay.
is that something you
Okay.
actually think, or you're just using? I couldn't tell, or if you're using that as a argumentative position.
I genuinely stand by the belief that what one should do is what benefits themselves the most in the long run. So if what benefits oneself the most in the long run is breaking the law to get an advantage, I think they should do it.
Now I'm assuming also that is, like you said, external any moral or religious
So that's
factors.
yes. This is the reason that breaking the law to gain an advantage does not benefit me the most in the long run is because it would damage my soul inside, right? Like I would know that I have done the bad thing, right? I forget the movie. My buddy told me about it. Um, there's cowboy city slickers or something like that. There's cowboys walking around. One says to the other, "Hey, um, if you could have sex with the most beautiful woman in the world, no one knows about it, right? Your wife will never find out, blah blah blah. Would you do it?" Right? And the guy's like, "Well, no, I wouldn't." And the guy's, "Well, why? No one would know. There would be no con." And the guy says, "Well, I would
I
know
would
it,
know. Yeah.
right? I would know that I have done the thing, and I can't live with myself knowing that." So I guess my honest take on these TikTokers, these influencers, is that they don't have that same moral core that I do. And so without it, is there really a problem with them doing this? No, because the downside that I would have, they do not.
Well, okay, so I guess the reason I wonder if that works is because then the next person who is walking down that street could decide that it is in their best interest to take a baseball bat and take it across the TikToker's head because they're in the way. And so what benefits them the most is getting to work on time. So then you just have a society of everybody clashing because basically whatever makes you the most happy. I mean, again, we're using this in a theory of there is no laws. So it's like, I don't know that society could survive because everybody would be acting selfishly, and eventually it would escalate to where, Hatfield McCoy's all day, every day. It's somebody trying to take what's best for them. I don't know if society
tragedy of the
could
commons. It's tragedy of the commons. It's prisoner's dilemma, right? The best thing to do in the. Do you guys know the prisoner's dilemma? Have you ever heard?
I've heard it, but yeah, you will have to refresh it. I'm sure what you say. I'm like, oh yeah.
Two people go to get caught for some serious crime, right? If they both hold out, the police cannot prove that they did it. They'll each get like 2 years in prison, right? But if one confesses and pins it on the other, the one who confesses and pins it gets 1 year, and the other person gets like 20. But if they both confess, then they each get like 5 years. Okay. Not full, but a little bit less. But obviously, the best thing to do is they both keep their mouths shut, take their, like, what did I say, 1 year, 2 years, something like that. And they get out. But that's not how it goes because, well, if I keep my mouth shut and he confesses, I get 20.
Yeah, you get worried.
And I can't risk that. So rather than everyone getting the best scenario of the 2 years in prison, we all suffer and we all get 5, right? And tragedy of the commons, there's a bunch of shepherds with their sheep all grazing a field, and they realize, well, we're grazing this field too much. The grass is dying, the land is dying. So they all make an agreement. We're not going to graze our sheep in this field for the next, like, 7 years, and we're going to go elsewhere, and that the field will come back, and then we'll cycle it. And each one thinks, well, I'll gain an advantage over the others by grazing my sheep there. And so they all graze their sheep there, and what do you know? The field dies. And then now they don't have access to that resource that they did, right? I think that's just what this situation is with these TikTok influencers, with all of these people, is everyone's trying to be the one to gain the advantage.
Right.
But I think this has been the case for years, right? This is not new with TikTok. This is just more in our face with TikTok. And so I guess to your question of would society survive, I would say, well, it has for centuries with this going on, right?
Yeah, but I think society has intentionally criticized this behavior, and when it becomes, and like the government laws are, that's why we have those laws, because we realized everybody would do it. So we've made it, I guess, in people's best interest to not do it, not because of like a higher moral stance that understands this is not good for society, but rather a forced moral, a fear of punishment. Like, people do not want to go to jail, and therefore they don't do it. And so I don't know if like it in a vacuum if it would work, or if it's been tried and everybody realized society just falls apart. So we have to put in laws that then increase the personal value of not acting immediately self-centered.
Yeah,
it's like that's
so
what
I would say there's your answer.
Yeah,
I would point to that being the answer. We must have government laws against TikTok influencers and stuff like that, right? The fear of punishment must be the deterrent.
It makes me think of there's a guy who I follow on multiple social media channels. His name is Joey Swole, and he's a weightlifter guy. And he basically calls out like these chicks who he calls out everybody, but the chicks who like pretend like, somebody's looking at their butt and they try to get him in trouble, but it's really like, it's not really happening. And they, or there's another guy that he just recently, like some fitness, it's always fitness guru who took a video of a kid in a locker room and was making fun of him. Right. And so he goes and he says that's not what gym culture is, and that's bad. So he kind of takes that position, but I don't know. I feel like there's some element that I don't know. I guess I lost my train of thought completely. But anyway, I just feel like there has to be some sort of gauge there, or some repercussion. Because I do wonder if just something feels off about it to just be selfish. I mean, maybe that's because I'm a Christian person, so I think in those terms. Like inherently, I just think, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Right? It's called the golden rule, but it came from. Well, I mean, it didn't come from. I'm sure somebody at some point in time said something similar, but it is a scripture that does say that. So I do wonder how much of that influences just like my inherent nature to not want to be completely self-centered. I'm actually okay. You know what, Kevin? You have to say something.
No, and I was actually about to interject and say I think our culture almost kind of props up these people who go in and make what we would consider to be drastic or irrational choices, and uh, they almost are rewarded by the crazier and dumber things that they can do. So they'll go into these places and try and make as big a scene as possible, and they are rewarded by it. So
Mm-hmm.
uh, I don't necessarily agree with the methods, but it's kind of hard to argue with Hunter about, hey, if it's actually working for them and they're not ending up dead or
Yeah.
cursing their own existence.
No, I think you're absolutely right. There's a saying, "Show me the incentives, I'll show you the outcomes." And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, well, look where there's a lot of
Yeah.
incentives, right?
No, I mean,
No real risk apart from like mild social embarrassment in the moment, but like
mm-hmm.
that's no real risk compared to the vast reward on the other side.
No, I agree. As far as if there's no internal like moral, thing pulling you apart, there's no real reason not to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, this makes me think of a stat that I saw that 10% of women between the ages of 18 and 24 have an OnlyFans account that they publish to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's because the incentive of having easy money outweighs any kind of negative that they're getting from it. So I mean, you got to think about 10%. That is a huge portion of a portion of the female population that is just completely like that's crazy. When I heard that, I was like, that's wild.
Yeah.
And it's so like you said, it's incentive, and the incentive creates the and it is partially society's fault too, because like you said, if people didn't
to a huge degree,
if people didn't watch it, if people didn't reward that activity, it wouldn't be done. Like the TikTokers, if that type of activity of disrupting society, where people watch and go, ha, he's disrupting society, if that didn't generate views, money, and they wouldn't be doing. They'd be doing something else. It's the same with we were talking about this the news media, right? Like the reason they lie so much is because and always focus on the negative is because it's been proven negative, fantastic, like fantastic as in like exciting, not fantastic as in positive.
Yes.
But those type of stories get more views, they get more clicks, they get more engagement, they keep eyes on this. So that's why that's what all news media presents, is because that's what works. And that's where I go, man, there's got to be some sort of, I guess, how do we legally, because I do think that's bad for society when information is inaccurate and people are basing a lot of their, vote or just how they feel internally about other people or because off of inaccurate information, because the inaccurate information is more exciting and generates more income and more profits than accurate information. And so it's like, how do we adjust to because that can't be good. Like, it's not good that a society goes around ill-informed, or even worse than uninformed is ill-informed or misinformed. It's worse to even be, because then you feel then you have the confidence that I'm acting on information, instead of like when you don't know, you're like, well, I don't know about the situation, so you won't act confidently incorrectly. But when you're confident, you're like, oh no, I saw a source and it said this, you will act with confidence, which is dangerous sometimes. Go ahead.
So that's actually an interesting point that you bring up OnlyFans, because
you're starting one?
no, not yet. Anyways, they actually started in a very similar manner, is they meant to be like a competitor to like Etsy and stuff. Like they were for producers and influencers, and it just kind of like over time molded to this,
Yeah.
to what it is.
Since they didn't intentionally put in any guardrails to keep it from becoming a porn website, it eventually became a porn website. I mean, that's why, I mean, on the internet, I think the biggest singular, like, entity is porn. Like, anything, like, you can just, there's so much on the internet, and that's because it pays. So, you know, it will always generate, you know, the money will always follow the eyes, and that's where the eyes go. So, I mean, right, that's been in the media and like Hollywood and entertainment industry for forever. The statement "sex sells," right? Like that's been, as long as I can remember, that has been a statement. So it's, I don't remember who first said it, but I mean, it's just always been an idea that sex sells. So people will always include it. Yeah,
I just have a theory
Go ahead.
about how we fix both of these.
Okay.
And it's perhaps wishful thinking, but we'll see. I have a theory. So the ancient Greeks had this thought that ethically, right, you must be raised ethically right in order to be able to even comprehend it later in your life, right? If you get to the age of like 20 and you've never engaged with ethics, you've never engaged with stuff, then you simply won't be able to for the rest of your life. You don't have the foundational building blocks. So I think that they were cluing into, when you're a child, things can be drilled into your brain in a way that is not possible when you are older, right? And I think that's true. And so I think the right thing to do that solves all of this is to drill ethics into children's heads very early. I think a large reason we are where we are right now is probably because of, to be honest, failed parenting strategies, right? Or weak parenting. And so I suppose the answer is improved parenting. But I don't know how you would enforce it, right? I think that it's a huge problem that right now, I know I'm biased when I say this because I am a teacher, but like one of the lowest paying positions in the world is teaching, and yet which is one of the most vital, important for the future, right? What do people do? But what do teachers do? But train up the next generations. And if it's almost no barrier to entry, you're going to get some shitty ass teachers, right? They're not going to be good at what they do. And then what do you get when you get those shitty ass teachers? You get kids. I told my buddy this the other day because he feels let down because he's teaching middle school woodshop, and he's like, it's babysitting, right? It's not really teaching that much. It's really heavily babysitting. And I said, what do you think you teach? And he took us in, he was, how to be a good person, right? I don't know. I said, nope. You teach the kids how to be you, right? I teach the kids how to be me. Connie Owens teaches the kids how to be Connie Owens. Every teacher teaches the kids how to be that teacher, right? We're setting an example of how to be what I am. And so if you have this really low barrier to entry for these teaching positions, you're going to get lower quality teachers, and then you get kids that become like that, right? So what we need is to really, I think, amplify the quality of childhood education, because that's the most malleable time frame.
I agree. So here's the kind of slight counter, but how do we handle what I would call activist teachers?
Activist teachers.
So you know what I mean? The ones who go in and like their whole goal is to brainwash kids into believing exactly like they do.
Yep. Shoot them. It's a fantastic question. I think the answer probably lies in that barrier to entry that I was pointing out. We need a higher barrier to entry, right? I think the only reason these activist teachers even get through the door is because the barrier to entry is as low as it is, right? It should be so abundantly clear when you are hiring someone, how is this going to go? Do I want this person teaching government, right? Yeah. We had a teacher that left recently. First thing he was talking to me about was JFK, Lyndon B. Johnson, just crazy conspiracy theories about previous presidents, right? And it's like, this is the first time I'm talking to you, right? How did you get hired? How are you here? This is crazy.
Right.
And I think that the barrier to entry is the problem.
Yeah, because I was like, what would be a barrier? Because I know a lot of, like, I keep cutting myself. I have got to learn to stop doing that, where I start 3 different sentences of 2 words each at the front of the sentence, and then just mumble my way through it. Because
You
when
are
I
an
listen,
incredibly smart guy, but you get so jumbled.
I do. I get very jumbled. That's the problem. My brain is. It's why I'm really good at writing papers. I can get a PhD writing papers, but man, when it comes to talking, I hate listening to myself because I'm like, why did you stop? No, it's just. Anyway, let me.
Have a little notepad and just start writing a couple notes out.
Just force yourself to finish the sentence every time.
Every time.
Every time, finish whatever sentence it. Fucking finish it.
Yeah, I wish my brain could. Speaking, I just did it
You
right
wish
there.
Your brain could do it.
Yeah, I wish my brain could do that.
Yeah.
So I can kind of reinforce Hunter's point there a little bit, because you see the largest disparities going between public and private schools. Private schools have a bit more that they invest into those teachers, that they can invest into those kids, and the places that get hit the hardest aren't public schools in nice areas. They're public schools in
usually, yeah,
the dragged down dumps of the large cities, and it's hard to find good teachers that want to go there, that feel safe going there. And honestly, that kind of ideology is like what he was saying, is like, this is my mentality, and I've got a few nuggets inside. I'm not going to say that all the teachers are bad or anything like that. I mean, bless the teachers that do actually go there and try to do what they can, but they may not have all the tools that they,
or the support from the administration, because a lot of times that's also I think that's a big flaw of academia all the way up through college, is how the administrations, what their rules value.
Oh my God!
And what it encourages. Yeah. I mean, go ahead.
I feel like college is such a different beast, though. Like in this part of the education system, it's supposed to be for everyone, but college is a whole other animal. You find those activist teachers there much more often, and they usually have the materials, the funding, the whatever that they need to accomplish those agendas.
Yeah, but I still think it just because administration decides where the money goes. Like, I know at Michigan State, it was something like, they had it was like, it wasn't a DEI department, but it was something like, and they didn't teach anything. They didn't do, it was a whole department, and it was like $1 million a year or something spent on just like people who would try to find a reason to create new laws and rules on the campus. And that's the other thing. If your entire department doesn't actually teach, and they don't have anything to do with the actual information academia, they will find a reason why they should exist, right? Like, they're not, oh, we did it, we solved the problem. This is actually, everybody's kind of on even. I mean, it's not fair because life's never fair, but we did it. No, they're going to keep finding some new great societally inequality that they need to fix so that they can keep getting funded and paid and to keep their job. And so that's what I was talking about, administration, because administration decides who's the chair of departments, and the chair often decides who gets hired. So, if the administration is really biased one way, well, then the people who hire the teachers are going to be really biased one way, and then the teachers are going to be really biased one way. And so that's where I think that does apply to high school and college the same, because the principals and all that, they also are very heavily involved in the hiring process. And so they also there's a little bit of the blame does lie on administration, even for the quality of teacher.
Sure. I think we can still point it back to, show me the incentives, I'll show you the outcomes, though, right? Because how do they decide? Sure, sometimes it is this advocacy or activism thing, but I think a lot of the times, and this was a big thing with college, they don't care, like big universities don't care if you're a good teacher or a bad teacher. They care if you publish papers and get the school money through, all sorts of different things.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times you would walk into a classroom and be like, all right, this is the coin flip. Is this going to be a good teacher who also does, or is this going to be one of the ones who is really, really good at writing papers that get published and doesn't know how to teach me anything? And I would then point it back to society, right? That structure is the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I would then say, well, the answer is ethics screwed into them when they're younger, right?
Yeah. Well, here's the other thing I was going to say. What is the standard by which we would judge if a teacher meets a certain quality level? Because I don't think it's education courses, because I took a lot of education courses.
No, it can't be. Yeah.
And those were the dumbest fucking courses I have ever taken. Brain dead.
I know.
Just like, I was like, no wonder teachers are horrible now, because this is the dumbest shit I have ever did. When Johnny blah blah blah, you hand them a sheet of paper. Are they, it's like, does it have flowers on it? Flowers, kids like. It's like, oh my god, this is hurting my head. I can't do that. And even at a college level, it was the most busy work. Like, it was insulting how much busy work it was. It was like, stupid. You should have this concept, and it was clearly just like, I'm making you do this so that I can say you've done work, not to actually cause you to learn anything. And I remember this lady that we had as one of our education, she had written a paper and talked at conferences as like this leading person in the education space, and it was the worst, like, least well-taught class that I've had. Like, it was I was just like, you're an idiot, lady, and I hate every second that I'm in this class. So yeah, I don't know how, like, what do you think would be a good set of rule or expectations, or what should someone have to meet in order to be considered a valuable teacher that would get some of these higher level I don't know, rewards for teaching?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I don't have an answer for new teachers, right? Like, how do you accept if this teacher who has never taught before should be allowed in? I don't have an answer for that. But I think, I've been going to the gym with my buddy, same guy that I've been telling you about, the woodshop teacher. And we always talk about, we see these videos on YouTube about fitness, right? These influencers, right? There's Dr. Mike, there's Greg Doucette, right? There's Athlete, there's all sorts of them. And it's like, well, who do you listen to? And I saw a comment on one video that was like, well, don't listen to the guy who is the biggest, because that's what I initially thought. Well, whichever one is biggest, that's who you listen to, because they know the most. And they said, well, he could be on all kinds of steroids, right? You don't listen to the person who is himself the biggest. Look at the person's clients, right? Look at the people that they have trained, right? So what I would say for teachers is look at their students. I like Athlete X a lot, right? What he did with, he took a very skinny guy
and made him buff,
right? And,
yeah.
It's like,
and he's taking fat people and made them fit.
Cool.
Like, I think I also would say the way he trains people is very similar to what an athlete. So it's actually about being fit and functional.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say. It's fun. It's not like.
And to be fair, the other guy, Dr. Mike, he's a bodybuilder. He's like, no, this isn't healthy, but this will get you big.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
yeah.
Sorry,
but continue.
Teachers, what I would say is look at their students 3 years down the line, right? The class, it's boring. It's work, but the thing that many teachers do is a pre-post test, right? Test them at the start, test them at the end, see how things have gone. If you're really good, you'll find a way to test them several years after they've left your class to see what's stuck. But that's typically only really done at the college level, because you'd have to pay the kids to come back and take a post test like several years down the line.
Yeah.
There's not really a good way to do that for me in high school. I guess the middle school teachers probably could, but that would be my answer. Look at the students down the line and see how things have gone. If they are absolutely failing their classes in the future, then if you taught them pre-algebra and they can't do algebra 1 or algebra 2, but they had an A in your class, that's a red light. That's a big red light.
And that does raise the question. So it's like, so then how do you gear the testing to adequately gauge what people learn? Because a lot of our stuff, it's like, we test their like science knowledge, math.
Yep.
That's a lot. But when you're talking like history and understanding stuff, some of my I love some teachers that I've had, but they were difficult. So some students didn't get good grades.
Yeah.
But I would bet those students actually probably remember more from their class, even though they got bad grades, than
Yeah.
they did other courses that they, like you said, it'd have to be 3-4 years down the road, because you can't just go with an immediate test, because some people can do that short-term memory where they'll
Right.
memorize a bunch of stuff and then it's in
gone.
2 years
Yeah.
gone. So that is an interesting. How would you accurately gauge and test? Man, that's tough.
I think standardization really it's a desirable thing, but I don't think it actually works out that well in the long run, right?
Mhm.
Like, there are several students that I teach right now that there's certainly no way. Like I'm teaching them philosophy, right? That's a course that I get through, and so I want them to engage with the gray areas between just pure white, pure black. I want them to play with thoughts in that realm. And it's like we're not even getting past the starting line, right? Like there is no comprehension of what this gray area would look like. It is either white or black, and it's almost there's nothing I can do to reshape their thinking in a certain way. And why I would point to it had to have happened earlier, right? We've reached the point where it's not possible now. So yeah, I don't know. It's a good question.
Yeah, sounds like you need to quit
I
being a
do.
pussy and become a great kindergarten teacher.
No, no shot. I don't need. I get enough. I'll never mind.
Yeah, that's. Go ahead, Evil. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
So one point that I will make, and it's just slightly touching on like the whole gender gap within the professors themselves, and especially starting out at like the earlier ages. Um, I know this was true in my life, and I don't know any many others who would want to be a young boy and to have to go through a chalked system and have to listen to a woman tell me what to do right from wrong. They want to see a strong, capable man, and they'll listen to him. Maybe not necessarily their own parent, their own father, their own mother, but it's there's a degree of difficulty there whenever it is
You're
someone
right.
who doesn't project authority.
And
And
I sorry to cut you off. I don't want it to be like people thinking, oh, this is misogynistic, blah blah blah.
exactly, no, 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 no.
It's been my experience that these young boys, right, at my because I teach high school at a school that also has middle school, so there's sixth graders walking around,
Mhm.
um, and the level of respect that they have for me just because I am male, right? Um, is distinct, it's present, it's noticeable, right? And I'm sure not one part of them thinks women are inferior or and I can't
Yeah.
it's just I think it's got to do with like they see that they could be themselves, right? Like or
They
they could
view
be
what they
like
will eventually be. Yes, they
yes,
can't imagine
yes.
themselves having big titties and being effeminate later in life, whereas they can see themselves being you later in life. So
Yes, and so
that's why
what
they
I
relate to
say
it. Yes.
naturally has just more weight, um, and it's not always, but I do think there's and to your point about
Titties? No, I'm
maybe not
sorry.
your parents.
Sorry.
I do think there's something to be said. Like what I've noticed is people's parents can tell them right from wrong day in and day out, day in and day out, day in
Hmm.
and day out. And it doesn't click because the kids are naturally at the age that when I see them, they need to break away from their
Yeah.
parents, right? They need to develop an identity. And so if your parents are entirely reasonable, well then the kid's going to do something unreasonable, right? But if the
Yeah.
parent has one little unreasonable quality, that's the thing that the kid pushes back on. But what I have noticed is the parents can be given the good advice, and then it doesn't click, it doesn't click. But then as soon as like your dad's friend says the exact same fucking thing, it's I get it now,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
boom, it's there. Um, and I think that it matters that we it's becoming it's been a highly female-dominated system, right? I forget, I think it's Richard Reeves who's pushing for more women in STEM, but also we can't forget more men in the heel jobs, right? Like the
Yep.
education, the health, that sort of thing.
Healthcare. Yep.
It's equally as important, and yet it's talked about far less.
Hmm. That
I
is
think you're right.
interesting.
I think that's necessary. Um,
And honestly, that didn't click until you started talking about like how it is a system, and yeah, you've got to be able to bridge the gaps for all of the kids, not just the ones who want to sit down and
yeah,
like, and honestly, like there's a fundamental difference between boys and girls at that age. Boys want to run around and explore, and we're physical creatures, like even at that age, especially at that age. And like having a 30-minute period where we all go swinging the monkey bars really doesn't,
yeah,
curtail that
yeah,
kind of energy that, kiddos have.
That is interesting. Yeah, I mean, I wonder because I do think it's good to have balance of having both. Just because, like, even when you're looking at societal things, um, like neighborhoods or
yeah,
cultures that have, let's say, a big fatherless issue, right?
yep, yep,
They have much higher crime rates.
yep,
But I do think it's good to have a female. And I mean, it's even when you have single. It's also good to have a female in the right. That's why it's really good to have that balance. It's not saying that a child is guaranteed to be bad or whatever, because there's going to be single parents or those kind of things, and that's fine. That's not a big deal. It's not saying that that's guaranteed, but it's saying the absolute optimum is to have one of each, and you get kind of a balance of the two sides. And I think that also could also apply to education, where having both elements of the gender spectrum and both just natural. I'm trying to think of how to word it, but just the way in which it naturally procludes from people. Like men are more naturally masculine and women are majority of the time. There's always exceptions to
yes,
the rule.
right, of
I,
course.
I
But
you know,
generality,
yes. I know
yeah,
someone's already sitting at home, like, my mom.
I know, yeah,
Yes. We're not talking about exceptions. We're talking in general, the broad spectrum of the thing.
yeah,
I do agree with you that there probably should be more balance in both. Like you said, more women in STEM, more men in the what'd you call it, heel,
heel,
HEA. Yes,
his term, yeah,
yeah,
heel,
that makes sense. And those, I think it would be beneficial. Um,
yeah,
yeah, but you're right. I think because it's really hard if you think about when someone gets a certain level through education, but they weren't actually learning stuff behind. It's really hard to catch up if you're like a couple years behind. That's why you used to hear about students being held back a lot more than I think you do now.
yeah,
Now they're just pushed through because they'll feel bad about themselves. It's like you don't understand. They'll feel even worse when they get up to the next grade and nothing makes sense because they didn't learn the prior information that is foundational to the next tiers
yeah,
of stuff. You can't just shove kids through. I mean, I know a lot of college professors who are teaching undergrad are like, it's impossible to even
yeah,
teach what I'm supposed to be teaching because they literally cannot read and write. Like they are at a third grade level at best. After they've graduated, they've gotten through high school and gotten accepted to the college, and they can't write at like grade school
yeah,
levels. Um, that needs to be somewhat solved at an earlier stage. And yeah, I do wonder how much of that is impacted by all the like child psychology there for a long time. That
that's
was
a huge. Oh my God, yeah. So psychology currently, the amount of degrees. What do you think? I don't know if I've told you this. What percentage of psychology degrees in our current times do you think go to women? What percentage of those degrees go to men?
I
To
guarantee it's
venture
vastly.
If it's psychology, I'm thinking like over 90%.
It is over 90%. It
Yeah.
is 95% female, right?
Mhm.
5% male psychology. How do you think
Yeah.
we're going to be as a society 20 years down the road when every psychologist is a woman and
Thinks about the world
men are
from
just like
yes.
I need help, right? I
Mm-hmm.
I need help, man. I don't think that you understand my natural
inclinations.
tendencies,
Yeah.
right? Yes,
Hey,
yes, right.
Psychologists may be 95% women, but bartenders are 60% men. So
You just got to be drunk when you need help. It's a good societal lesson.
And I
No, I get
think
it.
to some degree the nurturing like capacities
Yeah.
with and if you take that nurturing capacity and put it into child psychology, like, all right, how do we fix this? How do we take care of this? Blah blah blah. I can't tell you how many of our kids have what are called IEPs, right? Or plans because they need like extra time on a test or so on and so forth, right? And what I always do is I tell them, look, if you need the extra time, take it, right? But if you can finish it within the normal time frame, do so, right? And I can tell you every single one of these kids finishes within the time frame and does just fine on difficult tests, right? Difficult tests. My test average, I think, is like a 75, um, and that's like pretty low for our school, right? But I do it that way because they need to be ready for like AP exams and stuff, right? They need to know where they're at, honestly. Um, and I lost my train of thought there. Um, it's not coming back. Rip.
I was going to bounce off of that. There was a study done, and they took the same kids and they put them in like different courses, and some courses had like AP stand. It was actually AP is what was making. They put them where they had AP standards where it literally pushed them. They had to do a certain amount of reading, and the courses that forced them to work hard, they actually achieved more and were doing better overall than the courses that were easy. So it was like children, especially in like lower, we'll say up through high school, will match whatever the expectation you are putting on them.
That was my point. That was my point. Thank you. That is exactly what I was trying to say with that.
And so it's like, by lowering our expectations and our standards, and we keep lowering and lowering and lowering, we're just making sure that they achieve less and less and less and less, instead of saying, we believe that you can achieve this, and then making small adjustments for those who might fall behind. Like, there should be room to make an individual adjustment if it need be, but I think we've lowered the whole bar drastically, and it does have a domino effect that.
And I think it's, a parent comes in with a kid who's struggling in school and says, I think they have ADHD, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you take them to the psychologist, and the psychologist looks at them and what percentage of these psychologists do you think are going to say your child does not have ADHD, they just need to control themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Realistically, versus the percentage that are going to say, oh, well, we'll get them on medication right away. They clearly have this problem because they can't sit still. It's like, and I worry very much about it becoming more female dominated, because I think females are generally more inclined to prescribe or say you have this issue and this is what's going on, and I think men are more likely to say, "Now suck it up and be better," right?
Yeah.
rub some dirt on it and walk it off.
Just sit down and shut your mouth, right? That's really
and sometimes that's what's needed. That's the funny thing. Is like empathy is good sometimes. I don't want to take away completely from empathy, but there is a time where it's like, I empathize enough to know that really what you need is just to learn this lesson, because patience is a learned trait. It is not an inherent trait. Like, you have to practice it to learn it, and if you're never making someone practice it, they're never going to develop it. So no, you're right. I think that's spot on. I was going to say it kind of works with the medical field a little bit that way, because I've been in urgent care and a few other places previously. I went to urgent care and he couldn't figure out. He was like, I don't see anything really wrong with you. He just prescribed me an antibiotic, and he was like, here's 10 days worth of antibiotic. Yeah. I think that, and it's like, it's kind of what you said. Like, he was like, I don't know, I can't figure it out, but here's some pills. This might, if it might do something. And so it just made me think of what you're talking about. Like, they're absolutely like, oh yeah, sure, he's got ADHD. Take some.
More inclined to prescribe than to just say, nah, you're fine, right?
Yeah. Or to admit that they can't figure it out either, which I think is another element that a lot of medical professionals don't like to, they're supposed to be the experts, and they don't like being like, look, man, you got me, man. That's actually one thing I like about ER doctors. They tend to be a little more, they're at least like, okay, listen, we know you're not having a heart attack, you're not having a stroke. All these other symptoms, I have no idea. You need to go talk to somebody else that's a specialist, but I don't know what it is, so go figure it out. But yeah, so I don't. It's I don't know. It's
Have
pretty
we
good.
solved the TikTok influencer crisis?
I
the
think so. I think
apocalypse?
it's bad parenting and
And
schooling,
the answer
and we need to
is yeah.
children. Yeah, we need to get into them earlier. I do think teaching ethics at a young. Yeah, sorry. You know what I meant. You know what I meant.
That's why I made the face.
Chris Hansen. I live at 901 Mega P Drive. No. You come visit. But no, I do. I think you're right that it's like it's a foundation. It's a what am I calling developmental thing. It is a developmental. It's something you have to develop with. But yeah, I guess we've kind of solved that. I guess we went 50 minutes. You think that's good enough? I think anything else that we threw on at this point in time would be just lopping on a subject to try to hit an hour. So I don't know. Do you guys? I mean, if you have anything interesting you want to talk about, I'm more than willing to roll with it. You want to talk about drugs and sex and alcohol? All right, we're party boys.
Yeah.
Nope. Okay. Well, I guess I'm going to end it there. I hope you guys come back next week. I'm pretty sure Ply will be back, so you can get all of his shenanigans and wildness and crazy time if that's what you miss. And yeah, love you all. I'm gonna kiss 'em.